And we are live now. Hello, hello, everyone who watches us on YouTube or who listens to this small interview on the Virtual Jack podcast. Today we are here on a Rebel Labs interview with a Virtual Jack speaker. And today we had an amazing session, and our speaker was Nicolai Parlog, or NIPAFX on Twitter. And the session was about JUnit 5. It was about tests and how JUnit 5 could be the next generation testing on JVM. So a couple of words about Nicolai. He's a really passionate software developer. He tries to constantly read and think and educate himself and others by writing blog posts about what he learned and what he knows about software development. And he does that for work and he does that for fun. So previously he worked a couple of years at DISE, a German leading provider for spatial and environmental IT solutions. But now, since very recently, he's the main editor at Java channel at SidePoint, if that is correct. So he knows a lot. He has a lot of experience in developing software. He is a speaker at several really big Java conferences around the world. He published loads of technical content on InfoQ and so on. So he's an amazing source of knowledge. And if you have a chance, just find him on Twitter and talk to him. If you don't have a chance to find him on Twitter, he blogs at codefx.org. You can find that. It's a great resource. So, and I believe Nicolai will be really happy to chat and communicate with all of you. So, Nicolai, how was your first Virtual Jack session today? Did it live up to the expectations?
Well, we moved recently. New flat, new Wi-Fi, not entirely new laptop, but anyway, new operating system. So yeah, that part went horrible. But you guys kind of caught me, and then it went better. Yeah, I think the session itself was good. But as you said earlier, you said before that it's kind of strange talking to and the questions were good. So that part was getting me back in touch with people listening.
Yeah, indeed, we had a great communication. We had a number of questions throughout the session at every kind of turn point. And this was one of the most RSVP'd session ever. So there were 770 something people waiting for the session to happen. So if you're watching this interview just now and you haven't watched the session yet, go please. It is available on the Virtual Jack YouTube channel. Watch the session. It really is stacked with knowledge, and you would benefit from that. So Nicolai, are you ready now for the actual interview questions? We will start with our Blitz question section that we ask every speaker. And you don't have to elaborate or defend your opinion. If something comes to your mind, just go with it.
Tabs.
The first question is computer science real science?
Yes.
Do you prefer static or dynamic typing?
Java, so static.
That's great. You show a great deal of dynamic tests, though. That's a different thing. What is your favorite JVM language?
Java is catching up.
Yep, good. What is your favorite open source project? And you cannot name JUnit.
Java a lot. I think there's a lot of very useful stuff in there.
Sorry, you broke for a second. What was that?
I use Guava a lot. I think there's a lot of useful stuff in there.
There is indeed. Guava is great. What is the worst habit a programmer can have? What is the really terrible thing to do as a programmer?
Being done when it works.
That's true. If it works, it doesn't mean it is ready for production.
Yes.
That's a great answer. Actually, I haven't heard that before. As an answer to those questions. Yeah. So well done. Now we'll go into longer questions. And you gave the full session on JUnit 5 and the difference from JUnit 4 and what are the new directions where the JUnit as a library is going to evolve over the next minor releases and maybe further. So testing is important, and we all know that many of us kind of don't like that much. Not the testing itself, but writing tests and maintaining tests. What do you think? What are your thoughts on all kinds of driven practices? So test-driven development, behavior-driven development, and so forth. So when you first create a kind of wrapper for your application code, and then you just write the actual application. So where should we draw the line, and how would you approach and set up your project with the best practices about testing if you would lead a greenfield, like totally new project?
So for me, I'm still finding that spot myself. So when I started programming, learned at university, there was no testing involved. That didn't even exist. So then you get out into real life, and then people yell at you, you should write tests. Well, actually, in my case, because I'm only a software developer, that was the internet that yelled it at me. So then I started writing tests the way that so you write all the code, you debug it to hell until everything is done, write all those pesky tests. And that's not any fun at all. And also, they're still kind of valuable because they can still make sure that your code doesn't degenerate by accident. But that's just one part of the benefit of tests. So then I tried to get into TDD, and what's been missing is somebody like forcing me to do it for a longer time. I usually do it when I start with something very new. I didn't get TDD to work when I have to include something in existing functionalities. That had always been a little bit harder for me. But when I start something new, then I try to do TDD, and I realized that the better the picture I have of what I want to do, the better this works for me. But I don't think that this is because the way TDD works. I think this is more the way that I'm still a TDD beginner. Because when I watch videos like Sandro Mancuso has a great video online where he does like outside-in testing and test drives this whole bank cutter, and you can see that it works for him. And I think the difference is not the technique, but how well you can actually do it. And this is something that I would like to start with this test earlier, because I changed my perspective, and I now way earlier, for example, especially when I'm doing debugging, I used to just like go through the code and reproduce it manually, and this totally changed like within the last couple of years. I really realized the first thing I want to do is somehow get this automated, something that fails automatically, not only because covering this case, but mainly because it's so much easier to debug your code when you can just reproduce it in a couple of milliseconds instead of clicking through the.
Exactly. And well, I think to the same point is when you add the test later and it's always green, you cannot trust the test. As they say, you cannot trust the test that you haven't seen failing.
Yeah, definitely.
Because it might not work. So do you have any recommendation for maybe a less experienced developer? How would they get into the TDD, BDD, or if just like by experience and reading the books and nothing like specific?
It would be a great help if you can find a colleague who does this. So if you're convinced that this is right and you want to try it, then you should do it. If you think it's all stupid and just a fad, then I personally would disagree, but then it doesn't make sense to try it, because then you just try it for a day and then say it doesn't work, it wastes my time, and then you don't follow through. So you should feel like maybe you really want to know this. Maybe there's some benefit that you didn't see yet. And if you come to that point, then I guess it's really helpful if you know someone that does this, and you go to him and say, look, I want to do this too. Tell me, explain me, keep me at it, because you can do it yourself, but I think you have to be so disciplined to not fall back into the habit of, oh, I know what I want to do. I just write all of these 5 cases now first, and then I add the test later. To really go back to one test, one failing test, like 2 lines of code fixing that, seeing the test pass, then refactor, then starting over. This is really hard. It's really easy to just go with the test, write 10 lines of code, 2 of them are covered by the tests, and then, do that way. I mean, it's still better. You still have better tests than if you do none of them, but this is not you don't get the most out of TDD.
Yeah, I know it's a really hard habit to acquire, but it's totally worth it.
Oh,
So
sorry. So one other thing. As with most habits that you want to, you should be aware that it takes more time in the beginning. Definitely, you should not do it under time pressure, and ideally, you don't do it under any pressure at all. Try it on something that is not that important right now. If you're doing like the mission critical thing that has to be done by tomorrow, it's a bad place to start any new habit.
that is true. That is true. So let's go back to the libraries. Well, JUnit 5 is shaping to be magnificent, and what you showed us during the session was really impressive. At the same time, we saw like kind of some things like that in different libraries. So this would be the question about Spock, but not Spock comparison versus Spock or JUnit. Basically, well, Spock is a great testing framework. It does require Groovy, but it looks much better than we had before with, I don't know, JUnit 3 or sometimes JUnit 4 and so on. What do you think like a very relatively few teams adopted it? So it doesn't require that much. It's just a Groovy dependency, but you don't push that into your production code, right? It's just your tests. Why do you think we are reluctant to adopt a better technology? And is that a Groovy thing? Is that because people don't think tests are important enough to like experiment like that? Or are we just slow on adopting everything, and then will that be a problem for JUnit 5 as it becomes well released?
Maybe it's a little bit of everything. So what the first thing that you'll have to do, you have to learn, well, a new language is, well, Groove is not that different from Java, but still you have to do something new. And if you already have to, like, let's say you're a core Java developer, right? You have 3 years of experience under your belt, so you're not a rock star yet. So now somebody comes by and says, I need this JavaScript, CSS, hard HTML stuff working, or now you got to do this with JE because we can't use Spring in this project. Or by the way, there's this guy who left the Scala project, fix that. So if you're in a situation where you're already bombarded with a lot of new requirements, then it's not that easy to just say, oh, I'll just learn another language on top. So if it's just everything perfectly, everything is calm, and you just do Java, then and then other requirements, then you can just my daughter is crying. Then you can just do something else on top and learn Gradle. But if you're in the situation where you have to do a lot of stuff already, then maybe this is not so high on your priority list. And I also find that have a lot of pressure on developers are often, not necessarily, but often also the shops that are not sure whether this whole wasting so much time on tests is really worth it. And developers are strange creatures, so let them do a little bit of it. But when someone comes by and say, look, I want to teach the whole team a new technique, let's do that, then I guess a lot of companies will be like, no.
Yeah, it's a tough sell.
Yeah, I mean, it's not even performance or security or something else that is, I mean, it's not a feature. It's not this other useless stuff. So it's even less useless than performance and security and what other things that to make it really bad, that to put it in a bad way, that some of the project managers are really not like putting any energy into. But this is kind of a bashing. We have, as developers, we could try to stand up, but it's hard. I think that's the point. It's hard to do all of these things at once, and so yeah, I would assume that this is one of the reasons. I mean, I'm trying new stuff. Even I didn't try Spock yet, so I feel a little bit ashamed about this question. Tell me one thing though: does Spock have the same kind of tool support? Because I think that is also very critical. Like you want to have, as a Java developer, you're used to good tool support. So everything that I use that works like 80% of the cases, but the other 20% it crashes my IDE or doesn't give me the feedback I need. It's really hard for me to use it.
Well, IntelliJ IDEA has I would say decent Spock support, as far as I know. Like I haven't worked on the projects with Spock, like real production projects with Spock, but no, as far as I heard and as far as I tried it, it worked beautifully. So then again, that is IntelliJ IDEA, which has almost like support for almost anything. So I'm not sure if other IDEs are on par with that. But this could be, yeah, this could be one of the reasons that it's a really hard sell, and it has to come from the top, like it maybe a senior, the most responsible person in the project.
So one thing that I think also plays a role is like you have to think long term in many projects. Some projects you just do like 3 years and then you might throw it away because it's a microservice or your customer doesn't care or it's not successful. But many projects, you start out and think it's a 3-year project, but it's not. So I'm working on a code base which is like 15 years old, and we have to be very judiciously, because I'm still working at Dizzy, by the way. I'm only the editor from like next month. So we have a huge code base, and it's partially old, so it's evolving all the time. And when somebody puts something in 2005, that's likely still there. So if you think like if you put every, not to say Spock is a fad, but if you put every fad in there over the course of 10 years, then you end up with a very unmaintainable code base. So we, for example, are proud on being IDE independent. Our developers can use whatever IDE they want, which also means that on some things we have to choose the smallest denominator. So imagine, for example, IntelliJ was not the best IDE out of the box, and before IntelliJ was Eclipse, and before that there were NetBeans. I don't know what was before that. I'm too young, but so again, if you bake NetBeans requirements into your code because only NetBeans can do this well, then you lock yourself in. So I could see this makes it very conservative and very bare bones. Only use Java, which is also not the best solution, but still it puts back pressure on adopting new things.
So you think JUnit 5 will have a much steeper adoption curve?
I think because it starts with the tools. Like if they can get these tools working, then they have equal tool support for themselves and for a lot of other frameworks as well. And this actually takes some of the hurdles away. So this is the reason why I think JUnit 5 is so great. Now you can have, that was one of the questions, right?
Yeah.
So now you can try new things, having a similar kind of tool support, and being able to phase them out as well. You're not like you start with them and then you have to keep at it because you selected your tools according to, I don't know, TestNG or Spock. Now you can say, like, look, we're all general, they're all equal players in the field. And we can try out in parts of the code bases to do this part with Spock, and then we see where this leads us. Still has the added language and the added maintainability complexity if you want to do this keep this for the next 10 years. But at least for now, you're not adding another dependency on tools that now you have to use this tool because it's the only one that supports it well.
Yep. Well, that is the great reason to try JUnit 5. So if anyone watches us and you have the POM XML at hand, just change the dependencies and go see how it works. So thank you, Nicolai. I won't take any more of your time. Thank you for the extremely impressive session. Thank you for your time to share knowledge about tests and test-driven practices and the frameworks. To anyone who is watching us, thank you for doing that, and see you next time.
Goodbye.
Thanks, Nicolai.
Thanks, Oleg.
Bye-bye.